Vice Chancellor, Professor Sizuma, Deans, Deputy Deans, Directors. Can you hear me? Yes, please. Heads of departments, family and friends, Professor Campbell, Dr. Booysen, Ms. Ndabula, Msomi, Ms. Mandisa Ndabula, and Ms. Christine Lewis, who are our 2022 Vice Chancellor's Distinguished Community Engagement winners. Invited guests, colleagues, students, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and a warm welcome to this year's Vice Chancellor's Distinguished Community Engagement Award lecture. The Vice Chancellor's Distinguished Community Engagement Award is a prestigious and competitive annual award which recognizes meaningful and committed partnerships and collaborations between the members of the university and community partners in the areas of teaching, learning, and research to contribute to sustainable human and community development. It is imperative for universities to contribute to social and epistemic justice and equality by forming partnerships with communities outside the university. And they achieve this through community engagement, which is one of the core functions of higher education alongside teaching and research. Rhodes University has become a leading engaged university with a number of internationally renowned engaged research programs and meaningful community engaged learning partnerships. Today, it is my honor to introduce to you the winners of the 2022 Vice Chancellor's Distinguished Community Engagement Award, Professor Campbell, Dr. Booysen, Professor, maybe extend there so that they can see because you're behind. Dr. Booysen, Ms. Msomi. They are all from the psychology department in the Faculty of Humanities. And Ms. Christine Lewis, Mandisa Ndabula. And they have brought their intents as well. They did tell me about it, but I'd like to also welcome the intents. Are you all?
And we've got our community partners from the
community partners. Our community partners. Professor Campbell joined the psychology department of Rhodes at Rhodes University in 2020. She has a Master of Arts in Psychology and a PhD from Rhodes. And areas of interest include, among other things, cross-cultural psychology and trans-cultural psychiatry. Megan argues that she has been inspired by working alongside deeply talented and thoughtful female academics, particularly on the African continent, in Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa. She says learning from these women and working with them as they try to navigate their numerous and diverse roles as academics, partners, parents, friends, and colleagues has been an incredible insight that contributed to shaping their own career. Dr. Booysen completed his undergraduate and postgraduate degrees in psychology at the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University, the then NMMU. He then continued his postgraduate training in clinical psychology at Stellenbosch University, where he also completed his PhD. He is a registered clinical psychologist and senior lecturer in the psychology department at Rhodes University. He currently coordinates the Masters in Clinical Psychology program at Rhodes University. He is a Y-rated NRF-rated, NRF-rated researcher whose primary research investigates the effective, feasible, acceptable implementation of prolonged exposure therapy, a psychotherapy, for post-traumatic stress disorder in low-resource settings characterized by ongoing adversity, such as poverty and violence. Doyen says he has been inspired by many different people from all walks of life. Ms. Msomi is a counseling psychologist and a lecturer at the psychology department at Rhodes University. She trained and practiced as a teacher and worked for a local community-based organization before transitioning into academia. Msomi espouses a situated psychology and concerns herself with ways to move towards practice, teaching and research informed by the values and principles of African-centered community psychologists. She holds professional registrations in both psychology via the Health Professions Council of South Africa, HPCSA, and education, says. Nwabisa Msomi is a Rhodes University alumnus, and she graduated cum laude for her PGCE, B Social Science honors, and MA Counseling Psychology. She is currently a visiting scholar at Queen's University, Belfast, and enrolled as a PhD student at Rhodes University. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Ms. Ndabula offered online counseling support to school students, teachers, and learners in schools within the Joza community. Msomi says she is inspired by her mother, who models a generosity of spirit and compassionate care for those around her. She is also inspired by the children she has encountered in schools and local practitioners who are shaping educational psychological practices in pursuit of the liberation and well-being of humanity. Ms. Lois, a psychologist and head of she is a psychologist and head of the Rhodes University Counseling Center, while Mandisa Ndabula is a psychologist and manager of the Wellness Center at Rhodes University. These 5 colleagues engaged with leaders in the local community of Joza to establish a much-needed facility, the Joza Assumption Development Counselling Hub in Makanda East. Individually and collectively, this team has been recognized for their collaborative efforts of working together towards making a positive contribution within the local Joza community. The work of the hub was made possible through partnership building and collaboration between 3 partners, namely the Assumption Development Center, ADC, the Rhodes University Psychology Clinic, and the Rhodes University Counseling Center. The history of the hub is also manifold. Several years ago, a smaller counseling service for pupils at Nombulelo Secondary School, a local school in Makanda, and the Joza Youth was established, Youth Hub. Out of these various efforts and partnerships, the Assumption Development Center, ADC Counseling Hub, was established based on a deep understanding of partnership building as a key component in the application and success of community engagement in higher education. The application requires an intervention to focus on addressing community needs as identified by a community partner within their particular context. It challenges the psychologists to work in collaboration with their community partner to bring about interventions that meet these needs or their needs. And in so doing, the psychologist respects and promotes the community partner's agency for change. The hub has transformed the Rhodes University space by building on the principles of community psychology and community-based service, learning within the Masters in Psychology, in Counseling and Clinical Psychology programs, as well as in the internship year offered by the Rhodes University Student Counseling Center. This hub provides counseling and psychological support beyond the university space, whilst developing key skills of the university students and academics. Over the past 19, perhaps it could be more than 19 months now, the hub has implemented and succeeded in firstly providing mental health resources in the form of individual counseling and psychoeducational workshops for people living in Joza and accessing services at the ADC, particularly the youth of Makanda. Secondly, facilitating community-based service learning, training opportunities in community psychology. And we applaud this team with their interns and also the community partners for their imagination and courage as they work towards transforming curriculum to be contextually relevant in community psychology and building a sense of place with their community partner, the ADC. The selection committee that adjudicated on this award strongly believe that the inclusive partnership development process of the hub, the trust, commitment, and the impact of the hub on the youth of Makanda were significant indicators of a sustainable community engagement program worthy of the Vice Chancellor's Award. Through this hub, the university responds tirelessly, effectively, and collaboratively to fulfill its moral, social, and transformation imperatives through community engagement. And we congratulate all the members of this exceptional team and acknowledge their hard work and dedication towards the development of such a great initiative. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to hand over to Megan, Robile, Dwayne, Christine, and Mandisa, together with the community partners and the interns, so that we can hear more about the Joza Assumption Development Center Counseling Hub. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. It's really exciting for us to be here and to share the experiences of the last 2 years with you this evening. We're going to try something quite ambitious. We've got 9 speakers here. Each of us are going to present different aspects of our experiences of this community engagement initiative. But before we start, I want to just introduce you to the team. And it really is a very broad team. Neil, I don't see a chair. Jody, you can just pull it up for me. Yeah, I'll just click on the screen here. So 5 of us, 5 Rhodes staff members were named for this award. But this project would not have been possible without an enormous team.
Nice.
Okay, and I just want to take a minute to name each one of these people. Oh my. Okay, should I read it over there? No, the slides are not into the people. Oh, there we go. So I'm going to start with our Assumption Development Center team. Masonwabe and Nduna, who's here today, he's our center manager, and he's going to speak a little bit about the center and how it was created. Madoda and Mkalipi, who manages the Second Chance and Tricks program, and is going to speak a little bit about his experiences there in that program. The Rhodes Student Counselling Center, under the management of Christine Lewis and Mandisa Ndabula, who manages the community psychology oversight there and supervises psychology interns this year. and Prof. Jacqui Akhurst, who was our case supervisor when this project was initiated, and who held the interns as they implemented the work of the ADC last year. Then our intern counselling psychologist. Would you help me? Would you make some of them?
Sure, sure. Our intern psychologist, Siphuxolo Bikwe, Nwabisa Bungane, Khetsiwe Nkosi, Allison Simonse, and Maryna Slabbert.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me try to run. Then our Rhodes psychology clinic. We've got Msomi, who's our clinic coordinator, whose vision it really was to implement this program. And she rallied all of us together, a lot of conversations and motivations to get this project off the ground. Dr. Booysen and myself, who coordinate the Masters in Counselling and Clinical Psychology programs at the centre. And then we had a team of Casework supervisors, Captain Yolanda and Madoda, Chantal Mini, Alan Farid, Claire Murray, who all held our M1s. Thank you very much. As they implemented their counselling services at the ADC. And then our student psychologists, Nduna, and all of these are now interns this year, but last year, student psychologists at the centre, Nduna, Funguanikaze, Bankanshu, Constanza Stein, Auriratile, Sepang, Palesa Monke, Babawa, Sokoza, Nisha Adolf, Sipendele Zwane, Ntutu Mpondo, Letaba Temba, Sandisiwe Peliso, and Mandisa Ndabula. Sure, please can we give everybody a round of applause? Right. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Madoda, who can speak a little bit about the ADC and orientate you to what happens there.
Thank you, Nina. Well, okay, first, I think maybe just to thank the team, for making this a reality to really see. In our work, we've been starting to have sort of a holistic approach in how we do our work. And when we partnered with the Rhodes Department and clinics and counseling center, it made our work quite easy and also to have a huge impact at the ADC. So what we basically do is this: we've got 3 foundational programs at the center, which are work skills. That entails driver's license, professional communication, that's done in partnership with the English Linguistic Department. And also we've got the learners and the life skills course. The aim here is to ensure that the young people have increased employability so that they can have access to jobs. And the second program is the second chance matric, which we offer teaching, tutoring, and assist the learners to apply for higher education. And the last foundational program is the savings and credit groups, which is around stock fairs, where we try to ensure that families can be resilient and able to deal with shocks that they face, whether it's COVID. Here, how the program works is that the minimum of 10 or 20, minimum of 20 people, they come in and then put money in, and then what they do is that they allow members themselves to borrow, and then a minimum of 10% is charged. And then once they finish the year, then they share those amounts. And that's why there's about each year they've saved over $1 million, which rotates among the families in the township. And once the foundational programs have been completed, the foundational programs, there's a screening process that we're trying to develop. But hopefully by the end of the year, we should have something ready. But the aim there is to try and place young people, to identify them with the secret and then place them for work experience. We've partnered with some of the organizations in town, the Campbell Business Forum, the Makana Bricks, and the National Arts Festival, where we place young people on an annual basis. And then once they've completed the second chance, we help them also to access higher education through applications. And then with the livelihoods, with the increase in livelihoods, that we assist small businesses in the township, whether they seasonal or full businesses, where we assist them in 3 areas for funding, and we train the individuals, and also we link them to markets. So the vision of the ADC is to try and revitalize the township economy so that young people can get access to jobs, whether in the township or also in the town. But what has helped enhance the show, this module was the partner of the partnership with the Psychologists department and the clinic and the counseling center to ensure that it's got a holistic approach in how we do our work. And it has resulted in significant value that we've seen in our programs. And Madoda will talk to those outcomes that we've received through this partnership.
Okay, just to simplify the outcomes, I've decided to break down to each program how we benefited from the initiative. The first one is the second person matric, which is the main program that actually attracted this initiative to us, because we experienced a lot of dropout rates in the previous years, mainly due to the lack of psychosocial support, even from the high school that they come from the township. So it was very important for us to introduce this to our program, just to make sure. So what we got from the learners, the reason they drop out was mainly because of some issues that they experienced at home, and which we found that they were able to cope with them if ever they had support. So the individual and group consultation actually benefited the students, especially also the group consultation, because when learners interact with one another in a group, it becomes much more easier to know that they're not the one only suffering from such. So it makes it easier for them to develop solutions. So we also ran the mental and psychosocial awareness workshop. I think this one was the most effective one that we entered last year, because it's important to know that for our learners, it was important to know what's going on within themselves and their surroundings. So those workshops actually help a lot, because some of them is that during the exam period, it's when the learners tend to drop out a lot. And when you found out from them, they become very anxious when exam approach and other issues. And also we did the career guidance. Most of the learners actually did pass well, eligible, and others were eligible to study elsewhere, but they had no idea of where to start. So that one was very, it can be, to us, it can sound as if it's some normal, but in the township, it's a need. So with all those workshops and all those consultations, 2022 was the year where we experienced a very low dropout rate from the matric students. Moving on to the work skills development, as Maso indicated earlier, that we do work placement, and some of the work placement we do was to allocate some of our learners to the schools, and then we did maybe 1 or 2 day training, and it wasn't enough because some of those trainings are mainly theoretical. So when they actually go there and work, when they deal with the actual conflicts work and other issues at work, they found it very hard to cope within that space. So those preparation and readiness trainings actually worked in our favor. And also the wellness workshops. So it was a continuous thing whereby every Wednesday they would have sessions just to catch up on the work they've done with the schools. Another important program that this initiative worked very well in was the financial savings and credit groups. In most cases, when our mothers have to anything relating to money and if they share out, do the share out at the end of the year, it becomes very much chaotic a bit. There are a lot of conflicts. And so we cannot deal with such things every time. So it's become much more easier if there's a professional. And the moment that they PC that's a professional, they take it very seriously. So, but not only does this benefit our programs, but the broader community as well. Because we have to, actually last year, we were very skeptical that this was going to work. Because in the township and therapy and counseling, but actually it was the opposite. Because there was an influx of people, individuals, who actually came in to seek for consultation. And also resulted even to other families as well. And also we worked with the township schools, because last year there was a lot of suicide that were happening amongst the grades 11s and 12s. And those principals, they approached us. So it became much more easier if the interaction went out to schools instead of schools coming in, just to avoid the space constraints. The other one is that, I think this one is the most important to us, because the staff check-ins. We deal with such issues with many people, and you're not really trained in that. And sometimes it can be very frustrating even to us. So the interns that they develop such programs to also help us to able to help the community. Oh, I think this ends.
Thank you, Madoda. I want to highlight that the ADC focuses on economic empowerment, where psychological support has been introduced as an additional service. So this is important when we think about the social determinants of mental illness. We know that many common mental disorders are shaped by social, economic, and physical environments that we live in. There's something about engaging actively to improve these factors and then having access to psychological support, as opposed to engaging in psychological support about these factors. Okay? So we're currently seeing lower rates of hopelessness, helplessness, and suicidal ideation at the ADC Counselling Hub in comparison to the Rhodes Psychology Clinic, for example. And that's something that we really need to take note of. Okay. We're now going to turn to Dr. Booysen, who will speak about the Rhodes Psychology Clinic and the professional programs in counselling and clinical psych.
Thank you, Megan. Good evening, colleagues, friends, and also students that I see here in the audience tonight. I have to say that it's, and I have to acknowledge the pleasure and the gratitude that I have to have worked alongside and with colleagues over the last few months to do something quite unique. And I want to talk about the psychology clinic, but specifically also the professional training programs in counseling psychology and clinical psychology, and how all of this links to what is now known as the ADC Counselling Hub. So, here we go. So the Rhodes Psychology Clinic is essentially a subsidiary of the Department of Psychology, and it has been in existence for several decades. If I'm not mistaken, it probably backdates to the early 1990s, if not further back. I'm sure some of my more established colleagues would be able to help me. And at its core, it focuses on, and it is the training site for Masters in Counseling Psychology students and Masters in Clinical Psychology students. But I say training and service. And over the years, and based on my observation and experience, we've had this back and forth between how much training and how much service. It's a bit of a balancing act in terms of getting both of them right. So in terms of the two MCC programs, as it's known, it's largely informed by the Health Professions Council of South Africa's standards and practice and objectives in terms of what we need to do in order to train competent and ethical counseling psychologists, clinical psychologists, for them to be eligible to write a board exam and to be competent and to be seen as professionals working in South Africa. But to some extent, for us, that's not enough. In our department and within our training facility, we are constantly grappling with, since the dawn of a new South Africa, around questions of the relevance of psychology in South Africa and how responsive is psychology to the needs and issues of a contemporary South Africa. And some of the colleagues here within the audience have written about, and we continue to write about, this particular issue. So basically what that means and what we ask ourselves is, what are we doing? Is it appropriate to the context that we live in? Is it appropriate to this particular city that we live in? Are we producing students and early career counseling and clinical psychologists that are not only competent and ethical, but are we producing professionals that can think above and beyond psychological assessment, psychotherapy, mental health conditions? Can they think about the broader societal issues? So in grappling with these particular questions, in many different shapes and forms, within meetings and luncheons, I believe that a group of people found themselves coming together at a particular point in time. Not necessarily only last year, but last year was the coming together of thinking about these particular questions like so many others have done before us. But the big difference for me is that we've actually decided to do something about it. I would dare and be enough to say that I think that we all have a good understanding of what the issues are within South Africa, and more specifically what the issues are within mental health. And we basically decided to do something. So what did that look like? What did that mean? So we had to look at our curriculum. What does that mean? We had to look at our training. What are we doing within our training programs? What sort of counseling psychologists are we producing and clinical psychologists are we producing? Obviously, there are many things that we could have focused on, but one specific area was, simply put, and going back to the balancing act of training and service, was to expand our training, was to expand the service in terms of what these students are being trained in and how they can implement that back, not only at the Rhodes Psychology Clinic, but within the broader community that we live in. What does that look like? Simply put, for me, the difference and the gap that we have bridged is just over 6 kilometers. It has taken us a very long time to do that, to move access to mental health care to seemingly very difficult process, but also at the same time quite easy, to a different point within our own system, within our own community, to create access to mental health care. And that's how our training, our professional training programs in counseling and clinical psychology, that is where we are at. And that is what we want to continue doing. Thank you, everyone.
So Dwayne speaks about one of the goals of our program being providing our students with a community psychology-orientated service learning experience that takes psychosocial services outside of the consultation room and into Border Makhanda. Students in turn experience a more contextually nuanced understanding of how distress develops, is maintained, and can be remediated. The idea that Nwabisa had was to rotate our M1 students through the ADC providing individual counseling services there. But in order for us to do that, we needed to have a consistent presence at the ADC that could build services and systems there. So we reached out to the Student Counselling Centre and the internship program there. So I'm going to hand over to Christina and Mandisa to come and speak to us about the centre.
Okay, good evening, everyone. This is an overview of the counseling center. So the counseling center, Rhodes University Counseling Center, has a dual role to play. One, it's a center that provides psychological service to students, but it is also an accredited internship site that is accredited by the HCSA, the Health Professions Council of South Africa. And part of our internship comprised of a community component. Now, over the past years, our M1 students would embark on a project, and sometimes they would take their master's first year master's community project, and they would carry on with that. But these projects were not, they weren't sustainable or continuation. It was more of a once-off. Now, the ideal with the ADC Counselling Hub is that these services are now, it's a permanent placement site for our service. It is incorporating the community component or the community-based service learning into our internship on a permanent basis. And what's lovely about ADC is that our students get exposed to a wide variety of services, a different clientele that they would see at the Student Counselling Center. As Madoda has highlighted, they do trauma debriefing, couples counseling, individual counseling. They work with schools as well. So it's really a wealth of knowledge that they gain at the ADC Counselling Hub. And also pointers that Dwayne is saying that we're developing a psychologist that's relevant in South Africa. I do want to also say that the ADC Counselling Hub it's very rewarding in the sense that it affords another placement site for a 7th intern to come and train with us. So it opens up an opportunity for a master's student who's doing counseling psychology to come and train with us, which is very rewarding for all of us. And then I do want to show, this is a bit slow, okay. I do want to show the lovely faces of last year's interns. So these are your 2022 interns, and they have started all the work, and they showed us that the work can be done, and we are grateful for them. Just in terms of operationally, so the interns are at the counseling center. One of the interns go up to the ADC Counselling Hub, and they're based there for more or less 6 weeks. And then another intern goes up. So they're there on a rotational basis. So all of our interns are exposed to the wonderful work at ADC. And that really speaks to what we call a responsible and responsive health practitioner in the field. We really mold into that. And I do want to point out that one thing that's quite unique about the setup is that the master student and the intern are both at ADC, and a lot of learning, a lot of peer mentoring and peer supervision happens there, which is quite valuable. Our interns are also supervised by senior psychologists. So last year, Professor Akhurst supervised our interns, and this year, Dr. Kangule is supervising the interns, and group supervision is done by Ms. Ndabula. She'll speak to that.
Oh, mine is just that one slide. It's very, very, very small part of what everybody else is doing, and that is group supervision, which is basically just to make sure that our interns stay within the community psychology
principles in terms of, making sure that they are doing action-oriented research, community empowerment, as I've put it all there, and that they continue to understand the individual within the community and their society, so that they can be able to understand the dynamics of each individual. So mine is just that little. Thank you.
So having introduced you to the ADC, the Rhodes Psychology Clinics, and the Rhodes Student Counselling Centre, Maryna Msomi will now speak to how she led partnership building across these three stakeholders in bringing the ADC Counselling Hub to life.
Thanks, Neil. Molweni. It really is hard to capture it all. I think you can see that it takes a village. Okay, and I've been thinking about the shifts that happened in the discursive landscape so that a project like this could bloom. Okay, and it really is a work over time. But let me stick to what we've got here. Is just to acknowledge, and Prof Akhurst is in the audience, to acknowledge the really key role that all Prof has played, and that first project at the ADC. A community psychology program by one of the M1s, which she oversaw and supervised by Robertson. And then the lovely work in collaboration with the Rhodes office, Itemba, peer counselling, which also, hey, Itemba supports, which was, I suppose, a smaller version of what we've managed to develop now, around this idea of a hub and around this idea of accessible mental health support in a community place venue, in and amongst other things that are happening. And then COVID was such a trying time. But what COVID did is that it pulled the rug from underneath our feet and normal ways of doing, and we had to reimagine ourselves. I'll speak about how the Rhodes office anchored this work, but that's how the psychosocial supporters birthed, and really, hey, what all that is the sort of, and excuse this language, is the social capital, the bonds and the bridges in the discursive landscape, the relationships that we were building over this time. And I think what's important about this project is this idea that we were joining a moving train. The ADC, is already happening, and all we did is come alongside a moving train. And so I tried to capture here, they speak of mutual benefit. So really it's a model, it's a picture of what communities, what an African-centered, cultural, community-engaged, decolonial psychology might look like for us. And a key, in sort of the community engagement, discourse, literature, we hear this concept, mutual benefits, that we sometimes just throw around. But I hope this captures a little bit how really each one of these subunits in this village that it's taken really does experience benefits. So for the Assumption Development Center, you know, they have already spoke to it, how they had these programs, and because of the context we all live in, but also some programs specific psychosocial challenges, you know, that was the gap in their organization. For us at the clinic, the lack of readily available services, we have this waiting list that taunts me, and to have to turn people away who are genuinely in distress was, particularly during COVID, was a real burden, and within our discipline, the concerns, the debates around the relevance in psychology and the relevance of psychology. And then, you know, if you read the HPCSA, and as you heard Dr. Booysen saying, you know, a lot of what we do is regulated by the HPCSA. If you read the rationale for the purpose of training as a counseling psychologist, it's to meet the needs of the South African population, not the bougie minority who can afford medical aid. And so, you know, really being responsive to our various populations. And then again, as the Student Counselling Centre has said to us, the sort of mutual benefit, that the need that was there was around variety of experience opportunities. And all of this work, and I speak of that landscape and the shifts, and I'm sure we'll hear more, and we've heard Odai speak of higher education institutions and anchor institutions. So to really, all of this anchored and held and enabled by our Rhodes office. Yeah.
Thanks, Ndabula. Stay with us, we're almost there. We're going to talk a little bit now about how we evaluated impact at the ADC, and then we'll finish off with our interns' experiences. So, we had two goals for the ADC Counselling Hub. One was to provide mental health resources on its premises to people living in Georgia and accessing services at the ADC. Two was to provide our students at Rhodes with a community-based service learning experience that embraced a community psychology approach. We looked at utilization rates as a way to try to get a sense of the impact that we were having. Here's a summary of the number of people who were attending the various workshops that were held during term 1, 2, 3, and 4 at the ADC. So our average group was probably about 20 participants, and that was run by one counseling intern. So you start to get a sense of the kind of impact that one intern was having. This idea of individual psychotherapy as an effective model of intervention is just not feasible. So we need to look at group interventions. And we're seeing that these workshops were really well received throughout the duration of the year. And you see the kinds of topics that were covered there. I want to talk a little bit about there was a needs analysis that was conducted right at the beginning of the implementation of the ADC Hub. And that needs analysis also shaped the kinds of psychoeducational workshops that were presented at the Hub. And overall qualitative feedback that received from those who did attend was very, very positive. And like I said, we see good attendance over the year. What we also looked at is the individual counselling services and our utilization rates. So the blue in graph number 1 is our overall number of clients that were seen in each of those different months. The orange is the M1 students who are providing the individual services. So the way that we provided services, our M1s do the individual counselling, and then our M2s do the group intervention. And the idea is to eventually start moving our individual, the people who are accessing individual services into groups. So we see here that majority of the individual counselling services were provided by our M1s, but during July, our M1s go on back, and they only start seeing clients around, when was it? March, and then they end again in September. So our interns pick up those individual services while our M1s are not at the ADC Hub. We also see that the busiest months in the Hub and when services start to decrease, also during exam periods at the ADC. And then the typical presenting problems that we're seeing there, family, parenting, and relationship problems are really a key focus for people seeking services there, followed by trauma, career guidance, bereavement, grief and loss, and then substance misuse. Self-harm and suicidality was also noted there, but again, like I said, not as much as we see at the clinic. We weren't able to measure change in a large sample, but we were able to track the kind of change that was affected in 9 clients who completed outcome data for us at the start of their intervention and then at the end. And this is the individual counselling that was offered. And we see that we are seeing some kind of meaningful change in the reduction of symptoms in those clients. And it's important for us to also pick up where we don't see that change, like with client 3 and client 8, what was going on there, and maybe use this data to get a better sense of what was really impactful for client 5, for client 1, when we see a significant drop in distress. So this gives you an idea of some of the pilot data that we're busy collecting at the Hub in order for us to try to improve services and focus the work that we're doing there. So I'm now going to hand over to our 2 interns, Babawa and Mkalipi, to come and talk about their service learning experiences there.
Good evening. So basically, as Prof. Campbell said, I'll just be reflecting on my experience both as an M1 and an intern this year at the ADC. So as it was mentioned, we started seeing a bit of clients at the clinic before going to the ADC, and at the misfortune of having clients who just would never come back. So you see a person once and you go again the next time, like, oh, I couldn't come today, something came up, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. And then I got to the ADC and I was finding that people are coming back with feedback of, oh, I saw a client today and it was literally consecutive people. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, okay, so I have 2 problems here. The people I'm supposed to be seeing at the clinic are not coming, and the people I'm supposed to be seeing at the ADC are just not there. So I was like, well, the person in Edjosa right now is not coming because they don't have transport money. They need to wait for a month in. So it was a thing of, well, I'm not seeing anyone at the ADC, so why don't you rather come here? So in addition to the idea being bringing the center to Edjosa, it also helps in the sense that the clinic is also open to the community, but it's not always feasible. And the whole idea with what I was getting from community psychology is basically bringing that sense of accessibility, that because in as much as Rhodes is an open university, there is the sense of it's still very much there. And with having that space of the ADC Hub, then sort of communicating that message of, well, if coming here is not really something that is possible for you, here's another option. So it was a great experience in that sense. And challenges, obviously this is a pilot thing, still quite new, was for one that there wasn't, so as an M1, we usually see clients in the afternoon. So you get there sort of expecting that, okay, there's this spreadsheet that Master has created to say, okay, at this time, I'll see this person, and then you get there, they're not there, and there's no communication to say, oh, I couldn't come because.
which was very different in M2 level because you find that since you're there the whole day, you'd have someone walking randomly on a different day to the appointment. You're like, listen, what had happened was I had to go to the clinic. So that space of really understanding that the difference in context also brings a sense of you need to adjust yourself and be flexible to what you are getting in the space. And also this sense of constant psychoeducation in that, sure, you brought your daughter, but then this is where you end. You can't now come back and say, hey, so did she tell you? And did you tell her that she needs to? So it's a great experience in that you get exposed to such a different, I don't know, and you learn so many different things because, as it was also said, we don't just do individual counseling or the workshops. There's just so much more exploring for yourself as a growing training professional to see what is it exactly that I would like to contribute to this profession, in what areas do I really still need to grow, and what really is my interest and passion, what would I want to see myself pursuing from that. So really grateful to have entered this training at this time where all of this is happening. Thank you. Yeah.
Good evening. Because I'm going to echo some of Monica's experiences, I guess it's the type of hands-on you're doing. Sure, joining into ADC was nothing short of amazing. It was an amazing reminder of why I actually came into this profession. And working within this context, the South African context, that I don't think I understood as well as you were lecturing us until I entered that space. Sure, so different, not anything like the book thing. You have to adapt, be flexible with what you are given, what presents in front of you. Remain open-minded, because I think the range of clients and the problems they present with aren't not black and white. There's a lot of gray areas that, that's where I saw the need for African-centered psychology. Sure, and I don't think that experience that I got from the ADC, I would have gotten anywhere else. Oh, the challenges. Yeah, so the community is not really used to the therapy process. So you find yourself having to explain and re-explain. I think what like that said, clients will not show up. Or they'll show up 10, 15 minutes, even 40 minutes later, but I was held up with this. Can we get started? I'll see someone else in 10 minutes. Having to re-explain, or parents coming through right after you said bye to their child, wanting, so how was it? What did she say? Did she mention this? And it's like, confidentiality, having to go through that again. Sure, and I think another difficult thing for me was, because there's a lot of issues around spirituality that came through quite a lot, whether it was calling or witchcraft, and having now to integrate this with what I've learned and where the fit is in all of this. So I think that was very challenging for me in finding my feet around that. Sure, okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the boundaries that one has to set constantly and consistently with the client. Yeah. So my journey from M1 last year into M2, I think M1 was more of, if we had to use an analogy of a baby, learning to walk, so still holding onto the table and chairs and trying to find a way, leaning a lot on the M1s for, like what you were saying, this peer supervision and that sort. And then coming into M2, when I have to let go of the table and start walking, and almost taking charge. I'm still a baby. So walking and leading and building on the systems that were, the amazing systems that were put in place by the interns of last year, having to now look at things like, okay, so I know what my scope of practice is, and some of the issues that come up here are not mine. Sometimes it's social development and learning when my limit is and having to refer on. Sure, it's been nothing like I could have expected or imagined. I didn't think I'm coming out a better therapist in terms of this context that we live in. I'm more attuned, open-minded, and just more aware. Because this blooming and opening of your senses that I can't even explain. So I'm grateful for this initiative and entering this program at this stage. Thank you. So, in conclusion, we're hoping that the experiences that we shared with you tonight demonstrate that this pilot year at the ADC Hub has been a feasible and effective experience of service learning. It's benefited both the broader Xhosa community as service users and the psychology students and interns who provide services at the Hub, preparing them as relevant and responsible South African psychologists. This Rhodes University Community Engagement Initiative is a unique, creative, and extremely relevant experience for all the partners here. But the work is not yet done. We thank you for all your support to date and ask for your continued investment as our university and our community as we continue to sustain this wonderful initiative. Oh.
And what an amazing way to finish off the first day. So a big thank you and a massive congratulations to the award-winning ADC Counselling Hub team. Thank you for sharing your insight with us.
Thank you very much. My job is the easiest of all because I have no script to read other than to speak from my heart. A word of appreciation to my colleague for this massive work that you have been doing. Madam Director, Community Engagement, please speak to me. It's real, genuine, guided by a very deep fundamental belief about how to think of ways of transforming the curriculum in a manner that speaks directly to the need of the communities around us. This is my typical thinking and view of what community engagement should be. It's not, colleagues, in my thinking, it's not supposed to be a very superficial thing that people cobble together on the last minute and put on an application for promotion at a university. It is something more deep-seated that's based on a fundamental belief about what an academic is meant to do in terms of the community where they live in. What we are seeing here and have witnessed today is a very genuine ground-up attempt at really getting into the community and decolonizing a discipline and breaking the trappings of what are called the ivory towers that universities have tended to be. And what the colleagues have done here is to set a very critical, very genuine, very real model that we believe we need to aspire to. We have been challenged, and I must say, to think very deeply about what community engagement really is. If there is a model that I believe we need to learn from across our faculties at Rhodes University, it is precisely this model. So I want to rise, I have reason to really appreciate and thank my colleagues was very thoughtful ways in which you really combined the academy, the counseling center, the ADC, and all the interns in the process. So with that, I'm more than thankful, and you really have done the university proud. Thank you very much for this. There are some few gifts here that I, because of the nature of your engagements together, I'm not going to be giving them to individuals, but what I will do, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to keep them in their boxes. I know that you're going to do the 9 of you. At some point when you meet and rest and relax together, you're going to determine how you're going to share this gift from the Office of the Vice Chancellorate as well as from the Office of the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities. So these are collective gifts that you're going to sit down at some point and enjoy. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think the Dean of Humanities is terrified of giving anyone a kiss tonight. But thank you for thanking this extraordinary team for a fantastic presentation. And thank you all for being here. Very, very special to come and support them for the wonderful work they do. Have a good evening, and we'll see those that are coming back to the conference tomorrow in the morning.